I'm done with DC. I'm done with toxic politics. Let's move to Indiana, I said. And Indiana is where my husband's from originally. We had talked about moving there one day. He said, great, sounds good. We'll move to Indiana. No take backs. And that was 6 years ago. And a few months later, we moved to Indiana. And one of my first friends in Indiana, she came up to me after church one day. And she said, hi, I'm Joanna Taft. Would you like to porch with us sometime? I had never heard the word porch used as a verb before, but I was curious. We didn't know many people. We went to her home that afternoon, and I realized that Joanna was staging a quiet, subversive, citizen-led revolution against our atomized and alienated and divided status quo right from her front porch. She had invited people to her home that day across race, class, geography even, political preference, to not have these curated conversations across difference, just to inhabit a shared space, to remind us that we have far more in common as human beings and as fellow citizens than that which divides us. And that was revolutionary. And as I was writing this book, I traveled across the country and realized that people are doing the same thing with front porches and without. They're saying, I can't control what's happening in Washington. I can't control who's going to be in the White House this fall or in the new year, but I can control myself. And I'm going to choose to make my community better and more beautiful from right where I am.
I love that. You know why I love that? Because the greatness of America or any nation starts in the homes of its people.
That's right.
And if home is where the heart is, what's in your heart?
Yes.
And that's part of the solution.
That's exactly right.
Finding out, as on the porch or in the den or in the living room, talking to people about what's in their heart.
And this is endlessly vexing to many a well-intended public leader and policymaker who they realize that polarization and hyperpartisanship and growing political violence is threatening our democracy and destabilizing our peaceful and flourishing society. And yet they're very, very limited in what they can do to be a part of the solution. This is that matters of the heart lay beyond government reach. Voluntarily choosing to invite someone into your home, into your life, like Joanna did with us. You can't mandate that. You can't. That's beyond the realm of policy and law. But it's so essential. It's so important, which is why I wrote my book not for public leaders. Although, if you know one, buy it for them. It's on sale for $2.99 at Amazon right now. The Kindle version is. But I wrote it for citizens. I wrote it not for the halls of powered intelligentsia. I wrote it for everyday Americans to empower them to be a part of this civility revolution right from where they are.
America's Hope is going to continue with my interview with Alexandra Hudson in Las Vegas at the Freedom Fest. That and more next. With my conversation that I had with Alexandra Hudson in Las Vegas at the Freedom Fest. I love the revolution that you're talking about because it's a revolution of the heart, the mind, and the soul, which would free us all, actually, if we could look at each other beyond race and class,
right,
and just embrace each other as human beings created by God, and getting back to our founding principles: one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The solution doesn't really lie at home.
It does.
And it begins there.
It absolutely does. I think, especially, I'm a parent where I have 2 children. Percy's 4, Sophia is 2, and our third is due in 2.5 months.
Congratulations.
And I believe that, I love my work. I've been in 45 cities and 5 countries on book tour the last 8 months, and I'm passionate about sharing this message, this empowering message with citizens across the world. And yet I know that the most important thing I'll ever do is raise good human beings. And how do I do that? I instruct them, but I also model, this kind of behavior for them: selflessness and graciousness and forgiveness, being fluid in the language of offering and receiving forgiveness, quickly.
And that is the epitome of love.
Yes.
And a lot of times we want to love people from a selfish standpoint. When you bring in forgiveness, then you brought in a pure type of love that actually causes people to forgive each other and then find reconciliation and restoration. And that's what we need that in America. We need a transformation.
It's such a great point, and I think it's relevant to the distinction, the essential distinction I make between civility and politeness, to note that forgiving someone doesn't mean forgetting necessarily. It doesn't mean sweeping whatever harm they've done to you under the rug and ignoring it. You know, that's the same with how civility doesn't mean ignoring a difficult conversation. It means respecting someone enough to tell a hard truth, to respecting yourself enough to voice your opinion. That forgiveness does require respecting people enough to hold them accountable sometimes, and speaking truth to power, and to pursue justice and not coddle people from justice. Which I think is worth noting. And that, you know, you mentioned this beautiful word, reconciliation. And I think ideally, that's the ideal, that reconciliation is possible when there has been a rupture in the bond and the friendship. But sometimes it's not. And I think it's important to remember that forgiveness can be a one-way street. And it sounds like such a cliche, but I think it's so beautiful to this notion that bitterness, you know, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Like, you think that it's a source of power. And I'm honest in my book about how, you know, maybe it's the Irish in my blood. Sometimes I myself have a hard time forgiving and just like letting go, and I hang on to things. And I tell myself a story that is a source of power. But actually the forgiveness, the moving on and being free and full in my pursuits and vocations, and bring my full self to my kids and my husband, that is power. That is the life well lived. So I think there's so much truth in what you've said.
Look, I know you've got to get ready to speak, but I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions. And one is, when you were growing up, Alexandra, what is it that caused you or inspired you to become the woman you are today?
You know, I wouldn't be who I am without my mother. So my mother is central to my, you know, my life, but also my book. She is called, Kelly, get this, Judy the Manners Lady. And so she is this international expert on manners and etiquette. She's a whole curriculum. She'll do customer service training for companies, and she'll also do assemblies for kids. She has a whole kids album that's available on YouTube right now. If there are any parents in your audience or teachers in your audience, she's an excellent curriculum. She's a children's singer and entertainer. And I remember, you know, she taught my brothers and I to mind our P's and Q's. And I remember I'm constitutionally allergic to authority. I hate rules. I hate being told what to do. So I remember, you know, she would teach us how to set the table, how to shake hands. And I remember always asking, why? You know, why do we do things the way that we do them? And
you were that child.
I was that child. I still am that child. I almost get arrested every time I go through TSA. Like, I hate arbitrary expressions of authority. And so I always hunger for that kind of why behind what we do. And I never got those satisfactory answers. So those questions have kind of lingered with me. And my book is an expression of me finding those answers. Like, what are the norms today that are worth keeping? And that support a free and flourishing society. So I generally, though, despite questioning the rules, followed them because my mother promised they would lead to success in work and school and life. And she was right, until I found myself in federal government. And I told you what happened there, where all of a sudden everything I thought I knew about myself, about my confidence and the rules of politeness to help navigate deep difference, was questioned and refuted. But my mother, you know, apart from being the manners lady, is just the most unbelievably gracious and hospitable person. And she's someone who gives even when she has so little to give, doesn't have a lot to give. And she's someone who doesn't give up on people. And our home growing up was a revolving door of homestays and newcomers to our community. And, you know, she just really embodies the soul of civility in many ways. So grateful to her example and to her friendship and to who she is in my life.
Well, God bless your mother, because she's helping you and so many other people.
Yes.
Now, you have a way of spreading the civility to establish your own network. How can people tap into your network and get that help that will help them be empowered to help heal the soul of America?
Yes. Well, the subtitle of my book does say it all. My book is called The Soul of Civility, and the subtitle is Timeless Principles to Heal Society and Ourselves. And I do believe that people individually healing themselves and choosing to make themselves better and choosing themselves to be more gracious and forgiving and kind, that will heal our world, that will heal our country. And so how can people stay in touch and engaged? I would love to invite you to join me at Civic Renaissance. This is my publication, my newsletter, my intellectual community dedicated to exploring these ideas. It's dedicated to beauty, goodness, and truth, and reviving the wisdom of the past to help us lead better lives. And it's where we, revisit heroes, familiar and forgotten, that can inspire us today and offer us example and models for how to revive these timeless principles of living well.
Alexandra, can we do without the God factor?
Can we do without the God factor? So I'm a Christian. I'm open about that in my book, and I'm also a classical liberal. We're here at Freedom Fest, after all. But I also am intentional in my book to both note my priors, but also to show that there is a sort of core of human wisdom that people have independently found, independent of revelation, independent of the Judeo-Christian tradition, that just thoughtful people can and have observed the human experience and said, what works when it comes to doing life well with others, and what doesn't? Let's do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And there's a remarkable continuity in what people have come to, restrain yourself. Don't just be a buffoon and single-mindedly pursue your own interests. Temper your self-interest and your self-love, and do this, and that's necessary to do this thing called life with others. People have independently come to this idea of civility because they recognize that that's necessary for a prosperous and flourishing society.
But to your point, as you said, being a Christian or being a woman of faith, God has to be in the mix somewhere.
Right. God is central in my life, and yet there is a way to operate in kind of these lay secular virtues, and you don't have to be a Christian to be selfless and to be kind and to be charitable. Exactly. And to me, finding these gems of wisdom in other cultures and traditions, that is additive to my faith. That's not a threat to my faith at all. I think some people feel like, there is no truth, but the truth of my religion. But I think all truth is God's truth, and that people can independently find that truth, and it all goes back to God's truth.
Well, I'm so happy to meet you and talk to you. I hope it's not the last time. I do want to ask one final question. That is, what is your hope for America?
My hope for America is that American parents, choose to reclaim sovereignty over their home and ownership over their responsibility to steward the gift of being of new life, of soulcraft, of cultivating a new generation of Americans. I think that is the most important thing that any person in America can do. And we all have young people in our lives. We have nieces, nephews, neighbors, that we can invest in and steward and build into. I don't think there's anything, and kids they're such medicine for the soul. There's nothing more joy-filled and to be exposed to the innocence of a child that softens us. I think that in America, we're really hardened and calloused right now. We're really and it causes us to be savage. We just have this tough exoskeleton, but being around, kids, but also animals is the same way. It just softens, it humanizes us. It brings out the best in us. But I think that, investing in the next generation, investing in children, and allowing ourselves to be softened in the process and taught by the children that we're around, I think that can do a lot of good.
Could do a lot of good for a future and a hope.
Yes.
Alexandra Hudson, thank you so much. The book is called The Soul of Civility. Make sure you get it, and make sure you continue to follow Alexandra Hudson. Here on America's Hope, back with more.